Before the awesome world of John Wick, aka the Boogeyman, the world was a different place. This video recaps The Continental, a series set before John Wick, and how our boy Winston Scott came about being such a powerful figure in the franchise. Without spoiling anymore, make sure to sit back, relax, and as always, enjoy the recap. New York City, 1955. The cold air bites through the streets as the police stand in front of an old building, their hands gripping their weapons. Two brothers, Frankie and Winston Scott, stand on the other side of the iron bars. Winston is visibly shaking, his voice cracking as he repeats that he didn't mean to do it. However, as expected from the donut huffers, the police officers staring at the brothers from the other side of the window can't seem to muster up any sympathy. Frankie, the older of the two, stands firm and reassures his brother that whatever happened was not his fault. Frankie attempts to take the blame for the incident that landed them here, but both of them know they're not going to get out easy. Years later, Frankie is no longer the scared teenager he once was. He's hardened, emboldened by time spent on the wrong side of the law. Right on brand, Frankie is executing a meticulously planned robbery at the NY Continental, a luxury hotel owned by Cormac O'Connor. A self-made tycoon, Cormac took Frankie in as an orphan when he was a child. But today, Frankie is not here for charity. He's after something in Cormac's vault. The stakes are high, and Frankie's nerves are steady as he grabs the piece he came for. But just as he's about to escape, his partner turns on him, threatening to kill him if he doesn't hand over the item. Frankie, ever the strategist, surprises his partner with a concealed gun. The chaos erupts. The partner's automatic weapon fires wildly, hitting several innocent partygoers upstairs celebrating New Year's Eve. Cormac's men, led by Lawrence, quickly mobilize, and Frankie must fight his way through them. As he attempts to escape, he kills soldier after soldier, man after man, with extraordinary fashion, showing he has become quite the killer, making anyone that dare challenge him regret their decision. Frankie, the crazy moron, jumps out a frickin' window and into a garbage dump. There, an unnamed getaway driver comes to his aid, and both of them manage to escape. The other brother, Winston, however, is still the same naive soul trying to climb the business ladder in London. He's looking to make his mark in the world of real estate, attempting to convince businessman Mr. Davenport to invest in a car parking project. However, the pitch falls flat. It's only when Davenport's trophy wife, Rosalind, brings up the buzz surrounding pop star David Bowie visiting their disco club that Winston gets the idea to call his manager Tony. In a move of subtle manipulation, Tony convinces Davenport to invest in a venture Winston has a stake in. Turns out Rosalind isn't just a nagging wife, but much worse. It's a cunning move. Winston and Rosalind have orchestrated the deal together. It's all part of Winston's plan. But things take a darker turn when Winston spends the night with Rosalind. While she's in the shower, Winston is ambushed by three masked assailants. A housemaid injects him with a sedative and he's taken away. The peaceful world he's been building for himself is shattered. Winston's kidnapping wasn't just some weird hide-and-seek game. Cormac's men have tracked him down and are looking to extract information about Frankie's whereabouts. Cormac is furious that the coin press, the very artifact Frankie stole, is still missing. Thinking he's Homelander, Cormac gets frustrated with the incompetence of his men and delivers a cruel punishment. He asks one of them to shoot the other, but those nerds start complaining about the rules. Cormac, asking Sharon, his loyal manager, to open the windows, gets a bit more sadistic. Turns out that nobody, not even Cormac, is allowed to kill anyone on the Continental grounds. He orders one of his subordinates to jump or his family will suffer the consequences. Just as Winston is escorted into the hotel, the subordinate comes crashing down on the pavement. Winston, for his part, is not a man who submits easily. He's been through too much to let Cormac or anyone control him. Winston and Cormac have a little meeting, and Cormac spills the beans on all the trouble Frankie's been causing lately. And so Cormac, rather threateningly, tells Winston to find Frankie. Admitting that he does have a soft spot for the two orphans he took in as kids, Cormac wants his item back, as very dangerous people will be let loose if he doesn't retrieve it soon. On his way out, Cormac's right-hand Sharon is surprised that someone spoke to his boss in such a fashion, and lived to tell the tale. Back at the Continental, Detective KD is tailing Uzan, a Russian gangster who works for Cormac. She believes that Frankie is the link to Uzan's supplier and is determined to get to the bottom of the case, even if it means defying her superior, Detective Mayhew. Mayhew warns KD to drop the case. After all, the NYPD is supposed to turn a blind eye to the operations of the high table. But KD refuses to back down, setting up a tense cat-and-mouse game between law enforcement and the criminal underworld. That night in the beautiful city, Winston believes that he can't trust anyone, but he'll do what it takes to find Frankie. He links up with one of his old childhood friends, Charlie. Seeing a few other friends from the past, they ask how he's doing in London, and he tells them he was doing well until Frankie stole from Cormac. Charlie then points Winston in the direction of Chinatown, where Frankie's whereabouts may be linked to illegal arms deals. With Winston being quite upset his brother returned from Vietnam and made a mess the second he came back, Charlie reminds him family is family no matter what. He then hands Winston a coat and lends him the love of his life, a 1969 Ford Mustang Mach 1. As Winston drives the mobile around, he ends up at Burton Karate, a dojo run by brother-sister duo Miles and Lou, both of whom have ties to the criminal underworld. Miles, who served in the Vietnam War, is involved in the illegal firearms trade. Winston learns that Frankie has fallen out of touch with Miles and Lou after a failed deal. It's clear that Frankie's reckless past has caused him to burn bridges, and the search for him leads Winston to Alphabet City, an area synonymous with danger and lawlessness. Meanwhile, Frankie's partner, the one who betrayed him, is in the hands of the adjudicator. The adjudicator, a cold and calculating figure, tortures the partner for information on the coin press, an artifact so important that its possession could bring down entire criminal empires. The piece Frankie stole is more than just a memento, it's a key to power, and everyone from the high table to the most dangerous criminals in the city are after it. Finding out the man was paid $40,000 to betray Frank to literally steal the keys to the world, the bandit is killed and put into eternal sleep. Elsewhere, Winston goes to where he believes his brother is hiding out. KD, in the meantime, decides to stick her fingers where they do not belong. She enters the Continental and wants to learn more about everything that's going wrong in her city. Approaching the bartender there and ordering a drink, she puts money on the table and is frowned upon until someone gives the okay. Everything and everyone works like clockwork inside the hotel, and KD must remain silent. She then goes to book a room but is told everything is completely reserved. She is then handed a coin and smartly walks away, but not without attracting Sharon's attention. Back with our boy Winston, he covers up his car and heads inside an old abandoned theater. Someone then turns on a movie and Winston sees Frankie and approaches him until he is caught into a trap. Dropping his pistol, Frankie appears from the shadows and sets his brother free. Frankie's accomplice, Yen, isn't too welcoming, but Winston clears it up with his brother and says Cormac and his goons bagged him up and are giving himself and Frankie a chance to return the item for their safety. However, Frankie doesn't believe this for a second, and Winston is taken upstairs and told Cormac isn't a shit kicker anymore. He's in a criminal world that's beyond imagination. But a group called the Nile offered Frankie a new life if he stole the coin press. But time seems to be up. Cormac's men have followed Winston, and the three of them inside need a way to escape. As the goons rampage their way into the building, Yen wants to stay and fight to the end, but Frankie tells her she is family now and they need to run away. With 6 men breaking their way in and splitting up, the men realize Winston duped them and they hit the wrong building. With the 3 rolling Winston's car away and hitting the streets in such a cunning move, they need a place to lay low and decide to head to their old friend Charlie. Once they get there, Charlie reunites with Frankie and welcomes them all back with open arms. Yen and Frankie were about to start a family in that theater, but their plans might need to be changed after all that's happened. Yen takes a defensive position in case of any more armed troops, and back at the Continental, while working on a light bulletproof suit, Cormac is informed that the brothers eluded them. He tells Sharon to get the twins Hansel and Gretel on the case. Immediately, Sharon goes to a room, and the 2 freaks are asked if they want another assignment. KD, in the meantime, is taking a shower when she hears a noise. Walking out with her gun, she finds her place empty and sees a file that Mayhew left her. Upon opening the file, she discovers that Frankie is one crazy mother and was missing in action during the war. Back at Charlie's, the 2 brothers have a D&M with each other and get heated when speaking about their father. Frankie admits that Yen is his wife and that he cut Winston out of his life so he could do something meaningful with his own. As Yen looks around for intruders, Frankie says sometimes you have to make decisions you don't want to protect people you care about, and leaves. One of Charlie's friends in the meantime calls Cormac and tells him the location of both brothers. While the brothers sit in the car, the man approaches from behind and Yen saves the duo just in the nick of time. But there is no rest for the weary. Cormac and his goons have arrived and a shootout breaks out. Frankie and Yen also fire back and head to a helicopter that Charlie has arranged for them. However, their car flips over, and just as the men approach the car and fire rounds into it, they see the trio have escaped. Trying to catch them on foot, they spot the trio and fire at them, causing them to split up and get held at gunpoint. However, it was all a diversion, and the brothers fight. The twins Hansel and Gretel simultaneously arrive on the scene, with Frankie and Winston fighting as their lives depend on it. Yen, in the meantime, hides in a room and finds a newborn inside it. One of the men suddenly attacks her, and Yen must navigate the fight in such a way that the child is not hurt. Frankie, in the meantime, takes on the final assailant just as Yen finishes off her attacker in a gruesome manner. With the brothers also finishing up, it's time they leave. Hansel and Gretel then arrive on a nearby rooftop just as the trio get on theirs. The freaks then shoot and injure both Yen and the helicopter pilot, leaving the brothers to handle the situation. In a heartbreaking moment of sacrifice, Frankie decides to give his life to save Winston. He's killed by Gretel, and as the chopper takes off, the box Cormac was after turns out to be empty. The coin press, the object of so much desire and bloodshed, is nowhere to be found. Winston, now alone, seeks help from Burton Karate once more. But the damage has already been done and the bloodshed will be legendary. Going back to 1955 at the Bronx, Cormac sent the 2 brothers into the streets where he quickly put them to work as errand boys, taking on jobs far worse than any child should have to endure. One of their first tasks, throwing a Molotov cocktail through a window and setting fire to an apartment. Winston, full of youthful energy and desperate to prove himself, begged Frankie to let him do it. But he didn't know there were people inside. It was an accident that haunted him for years and one he'd never fully shake off. In the present day, Frankie's body is put through the incinerator, reduced to ashes as Lou and Miles watch in grim silence. Miles tries to lighten the mood by saying that it's just another day in the life of the underworld. Though the humor doesn't quite land, it's a tough crowd. A flashback takes us to the bizarre circumstances of how Frankie met Yen. She's stuck in a brutal marriage, being punished by her husband for not bearing him a son. So like any sane and reasonable man, he sends her on a deadly mission, believing it to be her destiny. But as fate would have it, the bomb never goes off. Yen, exhausted and broken, tries again and again only to see it fail each time. She's about to give up when her eyes meet Frankie's for the first time. And just like that, their lives are forever intertwined. Who knew love could bloom from failed bombings? Back in the present, Detective Mayhew shows up at KD's apartment to apologize. She's still angry at him for intervening in her investigation, as well as the fact that he broke into her house unannounced earlier. As they are about to make up, a call comes in and KD goes into another room to take it. Mayhew overhears the conversation that makes him pause. KD's phone call reveals Frankie's location. Elsewhere, Miles, now talking to Winston, explains that Frankie didn't give Cormac the coin press. But it's not surprising. What is surprising, though, is that no one knows where it is. So, of course, Winston proposes an alliance. He offers Miles, Lou, and Lemmy a chance to kill Cormac and take over the Continental, which would give them control over the lucrative gun trade. Saying that they all have bounties on their heads because of their relationship to Frankie, Miles and his sister would no longer be outside the system. They can own it if Cormac is defeated. Before they can get a clear answer, Yen bursts into the room, seeing Frankie's urn. Talk about poor timing. Lou mutters under his breath as Yen charges toward Winston. She's upset, but in her state, she's not much of a threat. The fact that Frankie's body was burned outside normal procedures doesn't sit right with KD either. She strong-arms Ezra, the coroner's assistant, into revealing where Frankie's ashes were taken. Meanwhile, at the Continental, the adjudicator visits Cormac. She quickly throws a few remarks about the way he is eating like a king when he should be starving like a peasant for his mistakes. She then removes her mask and Cormac is immediately put at unease. Hiding her face once again, she gives him a stern warning. He has 3 days to find the coin press. If he fails, the high table will replace him. Pressure's on now and the adjudicator walks away with a cold smile. Cormac's world is unraveling, but he's not ready to give up just yet. Winston, ever resourceful, doesn't have an army yet. But he has money, and with it he wants to build one. Believing they have the guns necessary for the fight ahead, they just need fingers for the triggers. The brother and sister start mentioning possible customers that have bought off them recently, and would perhaps join their endeavor. They plan on recruiting their father's old friend, Gene, a man who's one dogshit marksman but has an ironclad sense of justice. He's a sworn enemy of Cormac's, and that makes him a perfect ally. Winston is also told to head to the Bowery to meet with Maisie, a key player in the underground world. He's not sure he can convince her to join forces, but he's going to try. As Cormac's men ramp up their search for the coin press, Miles visits Gene and the two have small talk about growing old as well as the absence of Miles' father. Gene then brings up that rumor on the streets is that some young'uns are in trouble with the Continental. That's when Miles asks his old friend if he would join their endeavor, and without hesitation Gene agrees to join their squad. Winston in the meantime goes to recruit their next possible candidate. He attempts to acquire a meeting with Maisie but is somewhat ignored in the Bowery. Out of nowhere, Maisie makes herself known and Winston kills a bug which triggers everyone around to pull out a gun. Not really liking the way Winston looks or is dressed, the real Maisie reveals herself. Hansel and Gretel in the meantime ransack Charlie's place trying to find the coin press. They destroy the car outside as well, but they discover nothing. Back at the theaters, Yen is distraught at losing her husband and the love of her life. He was the man that saved her, that took her away from tragedy. Out of nowhere, Yen hears movement around her and finds Cormac's men looking around the place for the press. Yen makes her presence known and when the time is right she attacks. Slicing and dicing the goons around her, she takes them all out with ease. Back with Winston, he finally gets his meeting with Maisie. She already knows about Frankie and the coin press and wants to know what Winston wants from her. Winston, the money-hungry boy, keeps pressing the wrong buttons trying to bribe her with dollars. But Maisie isn't swayed by cash, saying that the trampled and homeless in the city are all she cares about. The only payment she accepts is love. Cormac's men then arrive at the Bowery predicting Winston would come for a meeting. However, they are disposed at point-blank range. Maisie then takes Winston to meet her frickin' army, an entire underground network that operates under her command. Winston's pitch needs work, but she likes his persistence. With Winston heading back to Charlie's place, he finds the helicopter pilot Ronnie there who's looking to get paid by Charlie. Winston instead asks Ronnie if he'd be interested in joining their team, and the scene cuts back to Lou telling Lemmy that she doesn't like using guns even though she sells them for a living. Lemmy then confesses that he'd be dead or homeless after the war until Miles saved him, and that makes them brothers. Yen, still reeling from her past with Frankie, hands over a rough sketch of the Continental that Frankie made before his death. The team then go over the sketch and try to find an Achilles heel in the building, and know they need an inside man. Miles has a run he needs to make and asks Yen to tag along with him. As Mayhew has a cheerful time with his family, he gets a knock on the door and is surprised to see KD. As the two are having a somewhat scandal, Mayhew takes her outside and she pretty much threatens to snitch unless he finds a green Volkswagen in Chinatown without a warrant. Inside that Volkswagen, both Miles and Yen have a discussion. She tells Miles she's unsure whether she'll join forces with Winston, but her conversation with him about Vietnam seems to suggest that she will. Sounds like she's in, though no one knows for sure. After all, trust in this world is in short supply. On top of the Continental, Sharon's friend Thomas plays some brilliant music. Sharon writes a letter to his father while Jean and Winston have a look at the Continental from nearby. Both Thomas and Sharon then have a heartfelt conversation with each other, and Sharon explains that his father gave him all the money he had to come to the United States for a fresh start. His father now cries tears of success for his boy even though he is in a dangerous line of work. Jean then explains one of the most important rules of the Continental: no killing on the premises. But there's an exception. A red button exists, one that Cormac can press to suspend the rule. If Cormac does that, it's all-out war. Winston knows he needs an inside man and plans on bribing someone inside. Having their sights on Thomas and Sharon, Thomas admits he is leaving the city soon to chase his dreams. Even though Jean thinks it is risky, the duo snap photos and have a plan. The next day, Sharon walks amongst the ordinary people and gets himself some mail. Strolling through the streets, he eventually ends up at Jamal Records, a good friend of his. When Sharon sits down, he opens the mail and as he reads through it, gets a bit stressed. As he gets up from the table, Lou takes out the paper and leaves. Handing it over to Winston, the scene cuts to Mayhew visiting KD's apartment. Looking through her things, he ends up searching the oven and finds something. Elsewhere, a kid tosses a rock through Burton Karate and Lou chases him down. Catching him, Lou gets into a violent exchange with some local gangsters and damn can she fight. She smacks all their asses one at a time and doesn't even need a gun to do so. Their boss stops the fight and calls them all pathetic. He then invites her inside his abode and the boss, known as the Orphan Master, says the dojo doesn't belong here. Lou calls the Orphan Master a parasite and leaves, and the Master simply says the boogeyman will be coming. Lou, not happy her father is being called a thief, goes to the dojo and tosses out a cabinet of smokes. Heading into the dojo, Winston tells the team they have a tactical advantage. Later in the day, Winston bribes a public bus driver to take Sharon and Winston to a secluded location for a private conversation. Winston offers Sharon freedom from Cormac's control. It's not just a business deal, it's personal, he tells Sharon. The old bully Cormac has ruined too many lives, and Sharon's is next. Back at the Continental, Cormac shows just how cold and ruthless he can be. He has Thomas murdered, simply because the young man wanted to leave to pursue higher education. Talk about killing the dream. When Sharon sees the body of Thomas, he finally makes up his mind. Cormac's rule is over. Sharon, in a moment of truth, tells Cormac about Winston's plan. But loyalty doesn't always last in this world. As the pieces fall into place, Winston's plan to take down Cormac is set in motion. And everyone knows one thing: there's no turning back now. Once again, we go back in time to New York City in 1955. There, the two brothers are told don't fidget and to sleep well. Their mother puts the brothers in the boot of her car and tells them that things will change someday before walking away. Winston, still clearly traumatized from his childhood, is ready for war. He and his team are gearing up for the ultimate raid on Cormac's hotel. They run practice tests, but Lemmy gets carried away and ruins the test. The plan is crystal clear. To take over the place, they first need to get their hands on the key to the armory, which Cormac, like all paranoid tyrants, keeps right on him. Everyone begins arguing, and Winston loses his shit and says there are no guarantees with this mission, and if you want to back out, now is the time to do it. Meanwhile, Mayhew is stationed outside the dojo, keeping an eye on everyone going in and out. With the crew grabbing some C4 they're planning on using, KD walks into the dojo and asks if the duo know Winston. Lemmy and Lou both act dumb until Lemmy takes a walk. KD then confesses to Lou that she couldn't care less about the weapons they sell out of the dojo. All she wants is Winston. She then hands over a card and walks out. Mayhew the weirdo snaps photos of everyone there, especially KD. Jean in the meantime acts as pest control to a random apartment nearby the Continental and fakes a rat infestation, causing the woman there to be put in a luxurious hotel for a couple of days until everything is fixed. Brother and sister duo then have a talk with each other, and Lou tells her brother that something isn't right, as Jean used to have a room in the Continental before, and he was their father's best friend. Miles seems to be keeping something hidden from his sister, and the conversation ends with Lou told to get some armor-piercing rounds from Jersey. Sharon, meanwhile, isn't playing nice. He's on Cormac's side, and alongside Hansel and Gretel, they grill the bus driver about Winston's whereabouts. When he isn't opening up, he is murdered on the spot. It's all part of Cormac's plan to track down Winston. But Winston knows he's got to win over Maisie if he has any chance of success. He can't just throw money at her. So he tells her a story about how Frankie and his mother stood by her family when their house was taken away by the bank. To seal the deal, Winston gifts her an abandoned bank and suits for her men. And just like that, Maisie is on board. Talk about making an offer she can't refuse. No need for a horse's head here. Meanwhile, Lou goes to grab the armor-piercing bullets but is being tailed by Mayhew. She notices this and gets into an altercation with the detective. Eventually, she knocks him out cold and realizes he's a police officer. She heads straight to Winston at the Rhodes Hotel to get the real scoop. Cormac, in the meantime, asks Sharon to prep his funny fumes as he prays for his prodigal son to return. Finding the coin press is his priority, even more so than tracking down Winston. Winston, however, links up with Lou, who tells him the cops are onto them. Cormac, the sick prays to I don't even know who and begins screaming how he is ordained to control the hotel, which will forever be his kingdom. The weird twins, in the meantime, show up at the hotel with Winston inside it. Mayhew and KD link up with each other also, and Mayhew has the location of Winston. He also confesses that he found the box in her oven, which completely destroys her trust, saying he'll be there for her no matter what. She hits him and kicks him out. Winston and Lou are then attacked by Hansel and a bandit. Lou is knocked out as Winston tries to escape. He's stopped by KD, who immediately holds him at gunpoint, the assailant from earlier attacks, and KD manages to kill him, but not before getting shot herself. Hansel then appears and walks Winston outside and into a van with Gretel inside. Lou is unable to help, and with Mayhew arriving, he finds KD injured, but she is still on the hunt and thirsty to end this. She finds a gold coin for the Continental Hotel, and Mayhew says she is crossing a line that should not be crossed. She hands her badge over to Mayhew, and he wishes her the best. As the rest of Winston's crew prepare themselves for the doomsday, Lou barges in and tells them Winston was taken. At the Continental, KD goes to the reception and hands over the gold coin for a night at the hotel. Being handed the keys to room 818, the scene cuts to Cormac about to throw Winston off the balcony of his office. Sharon watches as Cormac demands his coin press back. Being betrayed by Sharon, Gene makes his move and snipes Cormac's men. Cormac presses the red button, but it doesn't activate. Sharon then aims a shotgun at Cormac and demands the key for the armory. However, he doesn't have the guts to pull the trigger and allows Cormac to escape. Winston's plan goes into full swing as Maisie's army arrives on the scene. With Lemmy ziplining to the Continental and Ronnie also doing some behind-the-scenes work, the receptionist is taken out by Yen and Miles. Winston then contacts the crew and tells them all to rendezvous at the armory. Cormac, also making his way to the armory, uses some methods you don't see every day. Lou, in the meantime, is once again approached by the orphan master with his crew. Lou is told that her father was a gun for hire and a criminal who killed the family that once lived at the place. Showing her a weapon her father used to kill with, it really is a beautiful piece. The goons then start rampaging the dojo and destroy everything in sight, making sure it will never be used again. With Winston being jabbed by a frickin' super soldier serum, the alarms are activated, and the hotel is now a kill zone. Everyone in the building locks and loads, and there are so many assassins and killers in the building it's not funny. Cormac and his army beside him get all the killers they can grab and then send out alerts of the two targets to be killed. KD, also on the scene, fights with the hotel's customers and kills them on sight. Lemmy is then placed on a bounty, and as it stands, if any of the three are killed, a reward will be handed to the killer. Lemmy is then attacked by a woman covered in tattoos, and even though he doesn't want to fight her, she doesn't back down and eventually dies trying, but not before knocking Lemmy out. With both Winston and Sharon arriving at the armory, Miles is forced to attack and kill the assassins coming for him with the help of Jean, of course. Yen, hiding in the vents, sees Cormac and his troops while Ronnie fails in tapping into the security systems. The duo, however, are in quite some trouble when Cormac and his goons find them and disarm them. Cormac reveals himself and says all this was way too easy. Both he and Sharon have a bit of hurtful banter for each other when 5 of the assassins betray Cormac and pull the guns on the other assassins. Maisie and her troops have blended their way into the ranks and shit is about to get serious. As Cormac is held at gunpoint to open the armory, he instead breaks the key and turns the lights off, causing bullets to go flying. Back with Lou, she looks at her father's favorite gun and how he was a real piece of shit. Deciding the orphan master is no better, she sets off explosives, killing him alongside all his men. Back at the hotel, Sharon looks at all the death lying around, and Winston comes from beneath a soldier and notices that Cormac is missing. Cormac, the lunatic, kills a random worker at the hotel for no reason. Jean, meanwhile, is discovered by the resident of the apartment. Knowing he's been found, he tells her she isn't leaving. Instead, he gags her and makes her feel comfortable. With everything not going according to plan, Cormac is still out there, and he places a bounty on Winston and Sharon's heads, $2 million to be exact. To top it off, KD holds Winston at gunpoint and takes him to a private room. It turns out that KD's connected to Winston. She's the only survivor of the fire he started at an apartment in New York. Her entire family burned to death in front of her eyes, and she's out for revenge. Talk about holding a grudge. As things get intense, Jean doesn't want to see KD get her revenge just yet. He takes a shot at her with his sniper rifle and injures her, only for Winston to stop him from shooting. Winston apologizes to KD over and over and promises to help her, and even injects her with a sedative to calm things down. Meanwhile, Cormac has disappeared into a secret room in the hotel, because of course there's always a secret room, and he's making plans to make the whole situation worse. As the gunfight rages outside, the stakes get higher. Hansel and Gretel rampage their way through the building and Jean gets a bit friendly with his gagged friend. However, she seems to find him amusing and perhaps even likes him. He flirts with her and asks her out, which she agrees to. The two freaks in the meantime are held at gunpoint by Yen, who is out for revenge. Seeing as it was them who killed Frankie, she plans on blowing them all to hell. Miles tries talking her out of it, but this talk allows the freaks to escape and fight back. As Miles begins running for his life, he hides and is pinned down. Hansel and a thug slowly advance, and he is in real trouble. Calling on the radio, Lemmy says he'll save him and throws a grenade up the rabbit hole, and it detonates with Hansel still surviving. Ronnie, in the meantime, finally gets access to the cameras to support the team when Lou arrives on the scene with one of the orphan master's kids. Inside the hotel, Miles and Hansel are still alive, and Hansel then throws a grenade which goes to Lemmy and kills him on the spot. Just when it seems like all hope is lost, Miles steps up to the plate and wants to kill the nuisance once and for all. Out of nowhere, Lou comes to her brother's aid and they attempt to take down Hansel with the one thing they know best, karate. Of course, it doesn't go well. It turns out Hansel isn't really into the whole easy fight thing. Out of nowhere, the young Chinese boy steps in and saves the day by throwing Lou her father's gun, which she uses to kill the assassin. With Winston putting Lemmy to rest, he asks Ronnie where to throw the grenades. Ronnie guides Winston using the mailing system, if you want to call it that, to change the tide of battle and kill everyone while Cormac watches. Knowing that they need to get to the 13th floor to finish off Cormac, the crew try using the kitchen. Cormac knows he's in deep shit right now, and so, paranoid and unraveling, he asks Orson, the operator who maintains the hotel's systems, to initiate the Defusing protocol, a last resort failsafe that would obliterate the hotel itself, effectively denying Winston the prize he's fought so hard to claim. Orson, however, refuses. Yen, in the meantime, comes face to face with Gretel and wants nothing more than to see her dead. Demanding a fair one-on-one fight without guns, Gretel agrees to the challenge. The two women fight one another, and both are trained killers who seem to be enjoying this a little too much. With both of them getting the upper hand on each other, heroic music begins blaring in the background as Yen gets beaten up. Out of options and clearly losing this fight, Gretel pulls out a weapon, but Yen stops the blow and karate chops her opponent. With momentum shifting, the two fall into the water and all we can see is hands flying. Out of the wreckage, Gretel emerges only to see she has been strapped with the explosives and goes in all directions. With Yen finally winning, Cormac, the Twisted Man, smashes Orson's head violently and kills him in cold blood. The adjudicator then calls up Cormac and asks if he's found the coin press yet. Saying as he doesn't have it, Cormac is left to fight for himself, and so, he activates the Defusing protocol himself, using his and Orson's biometric data. With 10 minutes until the hotel goes kaboom, the crew are locked inside by security doors, and the hotel goes into full shutdown. As Winston and Sharon ascend to the 13th floor, the destruction is already underway. Alarms blare, the structure groans under the strain of sabotage, and time is running out. The only way to stop the countdown is by deactivating the system using Cormac's biometric data, his hands. They manage to locate Cormac just as he's trying to make his escape. A brutal confrontation ensues, but before Cormac can land the finishing blow, Katie emerges from the smoke and shadows. With a cold and steady aim, she shoots Cormac, ending the tyrant's reign once and for all. But his death doesn't stop the protocol. The system still requires his hands. Thinking quickly, Winston spots a maintenance train car nearby. With no time to spare and little care left for delicacies, he uses the train to sever Cormac's hands and shut the system down. Barely averting the total destruction of the building, the battle is over. The Continental stands, damaged but not destroyed. Most of Winston's crew have survived the night, though the cost is steep. Lemmy, the loyal brute with a good heart, is gone, killed earlier in the battle by Hansel's explosives. His loss weighs heavily on the survivors. Winston, victorious but scarred, prepares to take his place as the new manager of the Continental. But the celebrations are cut short by the arrival of the adjudicator of the high table. Cloaked in formality and menace, they declare that the Continental is now under interregnum, a temporary state of purgatory enforced by the table. Winston's success was not sanctioned. The hotel was never his to take. The final piece of the puzzle is revealed, the coin press, the instrument of symbolic and actual power. The high table was after it the whole time, but it was never in the hotel. It had been hidden all along, in the trunk of the car where Winston and his brother Frankie once slept as homeless boys. The press is now secured behind the vault of Maisie's bank, protected by her Bowery army. The streets have claimed it back. The adjudicator tries to get all sassy and makes demands, but Winston steps off hotel grounds. With zero hesitation and his signature flair, he pulls out a gun and clocks the adjudicator between the eyes, eliminating the table's representative and cementing his defiance of their authority. Winston stands tall atop the ashes of a fallen empire. The Continental has a new king, but war with the high table has only just begun. Thanks for sticking until the end. I am about to hit my 200,000 subscriber milestone, and if you haven't done it already, make sure to press the subscribe button. And as always, stay awesome and take care.